Hello, this is kind of like an impromptu video I'm trying to put up to answer a simple question of whether the Sonos Fives can do better with a Sonos Sub. The Sonos Fives are already costing $1,000 a pair, and this will add $700 to the cost. And we know that the Sonos Five is a base machine, so can it benefit from a Sub? Let's find out today. So for this video, I'm going to try a slightly different format. I will tell you that I don't really have the answer right now because I have not started testing. So what I'm going to show you is a process of how I actually go through the entire testing process. I set up the two Sonos Fives right here. The measurement mic is here. This is a U mic 1, and the recording mic is set up here. This is a H1N, Zoom H1N mic that records in stereo. And this whole setup is connected to a MacBook Pro, and the monitor is right there off the screen here. So I'm going to be looking at the monitor. I will try to record the happenings on the screen so they can have a better idea of how I go about doing this. So first off, I will connect the Sonos Five through AirPlay from the Mac. So this is the REW software which I use to measure, and it has been set up with the U mic 1. I will start the measurement. The Sonos Fives are connected through AirPlay. Now I'm going to start measurement. It is now going to be measuring without the Sub. The Sub audio is turned off. Okay, go to all SPL, and I will smooth this out so it's a bit easier to read. So this is peaking out at about 170, 180 Hertz. The bass extension is all the way to 30 Hertz, peaking at 30 Hertz. Tails off after a while, but you get a good idea. These guys, the Sonos Fives, do go down pretty low on their own. So the next measurement we're going to take, we will enable the Sub. And this is the interesting part. Sub audio enabled. Okay, now let's be. I've got to step away. My mic is here, it might get a bit loud. Okay, let's smooth it out. Okay, so for most parts, okay, the green part is the frequency response. Let me just change the color a little bit so it's easier for you. Let me select a much brighter color. This is with the Sub, okay, and the red, let me select brighter red. So the red line is for the Sonos Fives without the Sub. The green line is for the Sonos Five with the Sub. So does it make a difference in terms of extension? You see that actually the Sonos Fives do go down pretty low on their own already. Right? At this probably minus 3 dB difference, you are seeing that it will hit about 27 Hertz. But for the same output below 80 Hertz, the Sonos Sub actually extends, or rather the Sonos Sub makes the output from below 80 Hertz much louder. So this is the extra part that is coming from the Sub. Strangely, there is a dip at about 100 Hertz. Now this seems to imply to me that actually the Sub is crossing over to the Sonos Fives at beyond 100 Hertz. And if I read this correctly, it should be about 110, 115 Hertz or so before it starts to cross over to the Sonos Sub from the Sonos Fives actually. So for the rest of the frequency response curve, you will see that the green line, which is with the Sub, it is marginally higher throughout the entire range. Well, that's because without having to focus on the bass, the low frequencies on their own, the amplifiers and the drivers on the Sonos Fives should be able to much better handle the higher frequencies. It has more resources, more power to actually channel to those higher frequencies. So in a way, yes, it does help, but in terms of listening, you might find that it is probably a little bit overpowering on its own. The Fives already go down pretty low. Okay, so, I know what I'll do. I'll record some clips at the end of this video so that you can have a better idea of how it sounds like with and without the sub. Actually, let me do that right away now. I'll switch the playback with and without the sub. So let me turn off the sub here first. So what you're listening to is the song without the sub first. I'll record the screen so you can have a better idea of what it sounds like. So that gives you a pretty good idea. I hope today's video is going to be too long. So one last test before I move away from today's test is I'm going to isolate this sub. I'm going to make the Sonos Fives still think that this sub is still being connected. But I will move this to another room where it can't be picked up by the mic. And when I do that, you'll be able to see where actually the sub takes over the frequencies from the Sonos Fives. So just hang on, let me move this guy out. Okay, so the sub is now in a completely isolated room, separate room altogether. Smooth it out. Aha. The level is running a little bit hot, but yep. That confirms it. 110, 115 hertz, it will start passing over the bass duties to the sub. And so the Fives on their own, they are now thinking that there's a sub, so it's not going to play those frequencies. The frequencies are being directed to the sub in another room altogether. So this is the frequency response that I'm measuring from the Sonos Five itself without the sub, although it thinks the sub is connected. So the frequency response all the way from 115 hertz downwards is not going to come out through the Sonos Fives. So the conclusion is that the crossover point between the Fives and the sub is about 115 hertz, thereabouts. It's not exact science here. I don't have exact equipment to measure. What that kind of tell me is that it actually crosses very, very high for these Sonos Fives. The Sonos Fives are quite capable of bass in their own right, but you know, when you pair a sub to it, it passes a lot of the bass duties away from this Sub architecture into a ported sub. So the sound profile changes completely. So that explains the green line here, which dipped off because the Sonos Five wasn't handling it, and neither was the Sonos Sub handling it, and therefore the dip here. Well, so there you have it. I have done this test which I wanted to do. I wanted to answer to you guys. I also wanted to know the answers for myself, which is why this haphazard video to quickly put something out and tell you the answer. So the conclusion is this. The $1,000 pair of Sonos Fives on its own is actually pretty capable already. So if you're going to be adding a sub to it, yes, you will gain the better output at the lower frequencies, but you also see a dip here. The higher frequencies and the mid-range will get somehow a boost, but not significant, my belief. Right? So when you listen to the Sonos Fives on its own, it's already great. right? If you add a Sonos Sub to the Arc, you add a Sonos Sub to the Sonos One, yes, the difference is going to be profound. It's going to be big difference. But when you add a Sub to the Sonos Five, which is already very capable, you might not realize $700 worth of benefits. But the Sub is very deployable. The Sub can be used in any other Sonos setup that you have. It is one of the most versatile piece of equipment within the Sonos product offering today. So if you ask me, if you really need ultimate sound quality, go for the Sub. But if you are wondering whether it's worth $700, my honest opinion is no. If you already have the Sonos Fives, you'll be happy with them. You don't need the Sub. So that's all I have for today's video, and I will see you around in my next video.